Our next coming right up is Michael Casadante, the Director for Digital Transformation. And he's got a little conversation about the chatbot. Or actually, it's about Cody. So I will hand this off to Michael. And Michael, you do the introductions.
Thank you, James. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I just, we want to present to you the chatbot this morning. The chatbot, before I begin, is something that started back in 2018 when we were attempting to create a conversational tool for financial aid to better answer questions for students who were applying for financial aid. And when the pandemic hit, prior to that, we were already working with other departments to expand the chatbot's knowledge into other areas. But when the pandemic hit, that sort of put the accelerator on, and groups came out and asked us to bring their information to the chatbot. So the team worked very diligently and quickly to do that. So we wanted to talk about the chatbot, but before we do, I need to present, give some context here. And the chatbot is a tool where you will interface with it on a website. We want to expand that into other places, but it's very simple, right? It's a chat tool where you just type something in and the chatbot will attempt to give you an answer. And in that, it is probably one of the simplest, most straightforward things that you might interact with. And yet, that simplicity is not reflected with everything that happens once somebody hits submit on that particular question. You could not hit a more complicated and intricate thing that exists here at CSUSB. We have recently received permission from Strategic Communication to refer to our bot as Cody, or Chat with Cody, Cody Chat.
Ask Cody.
Ask Cody. Yes, thank you. And therefore, we're trying to give it a character and redo the answers into what will eventually be the voice of Cody, who we would also like to attempt to be perceived by students and others as a personal assistant to them. So I am proud to introduce Samuel Wakinde, who is our chatbot communication developer, and also watching in on us is David Vasilia, who should definitely be mentioned because he's the chatbot architect who started building it from the ground up. So Samuel, take it away.
Hi, hello everyone. My name's Samuel Hakwinde. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I actually joined the chatbot team a couple of years ago as a student assistant during my senior year here at CSUSB. I have since graduated and have been able to join the team under a staff, so I'm very happy to be here. I think I definitely wanted to start off with just what the bot was, which Michael summarized very well about it being a tool used by students all across campus to ask questions about a various number of departmental information, admissions, financial aid, registration information. Definitely also being a tool kind of like used to mitigate a bit of, I guess what I can say, backflow of queue length. For any staff or students watching in right now can probably relate to in front of the windows, or when you're calling on the phone a department to ask a question, the lines can get very long. And so the bot here is to help alleviate some of that, so very more important or complicated, nuanced questions can be addressed by the windows as necessary. And Michael, you also captured very well that to the users, when they open up the widget on any of the websites, they can talk to the bot. It's a very simple window where they can type in a question and they'll get back a response, like if they're talking to a real person. But the bot is a very big and complicated beast behind that I'm sure plenty of people don't or aren't fully aware of or appreciate, if that's the right word to use. But I think, and especially to that note, because it's so complicated, or this being a result of, the bot is so much more than an FAQ. I believe you touched on a little bit that the bot is meant to be a very conversational software that people use. It's supposed to emulate as if you did go up to a window, or you did manage to land a call with someone from the department, to be able to have a back and forth with the bot. You can ask a question and the bot brings back a response that may result in follow-up questions or diverge into other topics which users can follow. I'd like to share my screen a bit to kind of give a little bit of a visual as I go into basically how the bot works, as most of it in a nutshell as I can, while still respecting just how complicated of a system that it is. So referring back to the widget that users see all of the time on any of like the main department websites, the widget to the user is just this small little box that they can use to type anything to the chatbot. But what they don't realize is that we have an entire backend here, which is what the chatbot team is able to see. And this entire backend here, you can see my conversation just popped up. This backend allows us to watch every single conversation as it comes in. So even though that the bot isn't a real person, or the bot may not have live agents available to it, there is always someone on the back end that is watching every conversation that comes in all of the time. I also see coming in the chat, yes, do feel free to ask any questions at any point during this. I'd be happy to answer them. But back to how the bot works. Communicate here is the management system that we use that keeps track of all conversations. It keeps tracks of users and where they come in from. And then when Communicate receives any questions and it shows up on our backend here, it then sends it to what our real artificial intelligence system, natural language processing system is, which is Dialogflow, which is a Google product through Google Cloud services. And you can imagine it as essentially a very, very big database table of all of the question and answer pairs about any sort of CSUSB institutional knowledge about any topics regarding the campus. The bot doesn't know everything. You can't go and ask it, what's the weather like today? The bot doesn't know that, maybe yet, but it definitely is knowledgeable about a lot of important processes and procedures and topics related to everything a student would want to know. But so it comes into Dialogflow, and Dialogflow uses a series of natural language processing algorithms to determine, based on what the user said, where they should go or what response they should get. And as an example, every one of these is pretty much the whole series of ways someone could ask a question. Because if you've ever been to a front window, or if you've ever talked to anyone in real life, which I'm sure everyone here has, everyone can say one thing millions of different ways. You've got people from all over the world, or just even all over the state, all over the country, and they will all refer to one thing an uncountable amount of ways. And so what Dialogflow is able to do is we provided examples of all these different ways someone could say or ask a question to one particular topic, and it will give them an answer. Now, that's a very oversimplification of it, because again, the bot's a lot more than just an FAQ. And the institutional knowledge here at CSUSB in some ways can not become, but is very complex or complicated, or there's a lot of caveats, or if you're in this situation, this procedure applies, or if this different situation, another procedure applies. So even though we have these this very simple setup of questions and answer, we are able to construct much larger conversations about if someone is asking about, I want to register for classes, the bot would have to come back to the user and ask, all right, well, the procedure to register for classes is different between if you're registering before census or after census. Which time period are you registering for? And the user will respond with the time period, and then the bot is able to go, all right, well, here's a procedure for registering after census. You're going to need to fill this out, get permission from all these people, etc. But dialogue flow here and this platform is the big bulk of the AI, which is able to interpret what people say and give back a response. Now, this isn't even the end or extent of this, because sometimes maybe there are certain topics where the bot refers to a database. We have a few different databases of information available to the chatbot, which include departmental information, includes information about the programs that CSUSB offers. And the biggest one that was the last biggest database that we just added to the bot was calendar dates. Users can come to the bot and ask, like, when is fall census? You can ask questions like, when is fall census? When are final exams? And the bot will look through the database and go, all right, I got 2 dates for you, because right now we have 2 dates in the database, but I'm asking for fall 2023, which already passed, unfortunately, for students asking when census is. But the bot will come back with the date. This is census, and it'll also come with a link that is relevant to the date where students can go add, drop, or swap classes through My Coyote, and then they'll be redirected. But so this database interaction adds another layer of complexity behind dialog flow, because now dialog flow will then have to go to the code that we wrote that can search the database and go, hey, I got this user who's asking for this information. What do you got for me? And so that information will come back to Dialogflow, and Dialogflow can then present the response to the user through this widget. Is there anything I'm missing, or maybe you want to throw in, Michael?
Well, I think there's a history to this. So we initially put it on the financial aid website. We eventually, and this isn't in order necessarily, built a chatbot to answer questions about advising, admissions, student financial services, Office of the Registrar, the Career Center, parking, and ITS's Technology Support Center, which is a big part of what it can answer. But those are topics that maybe some of us could wrap our head around a little bit, having experience interacting with those departments. But it is important to understand that we are always searching for other data sources, reliable, quality data sources to connect and plug into the chatbot as well. And the University Calendar is a great example of that. University Calendar isn't really owned by any particular department. Sure, the Office of the Registrar and some of those student-related departments are the individuals that work in those departments really know what those important dates are and use the calendar a lot, but so does everybody else. And yeah, as soon as we plugged it into that information, we realized, looking at the analytics, that is the most widely accessed resource that the chatbot knows are those important dates. So yeah, I guess just to mention that we're always searching for good data sources. You mentioned the programs that we offer here on campus. I mean, it's worth admitting that we don't consider that a quality data source, quite honestly. We may be missing some programs that are being offered, and where we really fall short, it has to do with who to contact to get more information about all the program certificates and credentials that we offer on campus. That might seem like a shock to some, but if you know a better data source, we'd love to hear it. And these are some of the sorts of things we do behind the scenes to make the chatbot better.
You mentioned a couple of things that I wanted to touch on. Definitely, yes, we're always looking for new data sources. We're currently looking at new ways to integrate even more information to the bot. We'd love the bot to be able to, I mean, currently right now, the bot can certainly answer questions about, how much does something cost? Like, how much are parking permits, or how much is the enrollment confirmation deposit? How much is the orientation registration fee? And the bot can certainly refer to users to, where they need to go. But that's one example of something that would be great to have in a database where, the people who are aware of what the fees are or the source of this information, where it's constantly being updated. The bot, instead of needing to send users to where this information is, the bot would be able to just directly tell someone, yeah, you need to pay this amount of money in order to change your major, which may or may not change in the future. But if it does change, then the bot is already aware of the change and it's not giving false cost information.
Right, and the database just needs to be updated. So,
exactly.
Yeah, and the other thing is we feel more confident when we are drawing from a database where the bot can say that there isn't a program in the area that you're asking for. I don't know the cost of what it is that you're asking for, and then we can research. Should the database know the cost of that particular thing, or is that is it really not a program? Is it really not a thing that costs money at all? Whatever it is, but we'll feel a lot more confident that the bot is. It can just search a database for something related to the cost of something and see if it has a hit on it or not.
The other thing that you mentioned was regarding, I just had it in my head. You just mentioned it right now about conversations, but calendar database information, looking through right. You were talking about, yeah. So our analytics on the back end for the bot, calendar dates are absolutely always the most common thing that's asked on the bot or triggered on the bot. People are always asking the bots for the dates. But interestingly, throughout the year, and we observed this by watching conversations on Communicator, using another analytics tool that we have further on the back end to search conversations by keywords and stuff like that. While the calendar dates are always the number one thing asked for, we always see a cyclical pattern of questions throughout the year based on important things that are happening on campus. Like when final exams roll around, you'll always have people asking, when are final exams? Or when applications roll around, when applications open up, people will ask about, how do I submit my application to CSUSB? How do I find CSU apply? And different questions about that. So even though the calendar date information and almost every database that we have is asked or referred to a lot, we always see these important topics popping up here and there that the bot is able to answer about, that students are always concerned about when that time rolls around. I think, yeah, we already talked about a little bit about everything the bot knows. It can answer all sorts of questions about admissions, even things down to something like what are the freshman requirements, and the bot will be able to give information. Perhaps I was not specific enough, but I was. But But even here, here's a great example of something else that kind of pops up. Sometimes users, when talking to the bot, are a little bit vague or ask their question in a way where the bot's not entirely sure where to send them right off the get-go. We've seen a lot of people, for example, ask the bot, I want to make an appointment. And since this is a system that emulates you going up to a window and having a conversation with someone, if you go up to a window and say, I want to make an appointment, depending on which window it is, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Like, okay, you're at financial aid. But this bot here is on different websites. This bot can be placed on any website. So the bot has to ask, what kind of appointment do you want to make? And so here's an example here where if someone is a little bit vague, or in this situation, ask, what are requirements? What kind of requirements are you asking about? Well, I will go ahead and choose, I'm asking about freshman A through G requirements. And then the bot will then provide specific information after it kind of helps guide the user to being a little more specific or clear about what kind of information they're looking for. Moving to that, I think it'll be um, the next thing I wanted to talk about is, we've talked about what the bot knows. We've talked about the basics of going from communicate to dialogue flow, how the bot processes this. But next up is like, how does the chatbot team help the bot grow and develop and continuously get better? One of the things which I already briefly touched upon a little bit is watching communicate here. There's always someone part of the chatbot team that's always watching communicate. We're always seeing what conversations are coming in. So if someone asks the bot any sort of question, or someone interacts with the bot, someone is always watching on the back end, and someone is always there to vet how good of a quality the conversation was. And on communicate, we even use tags to help us keep track of what are some really good conversations. Like, did the bot manage to answer everything that this person threw at the bot? So for example, hello, they ask for the deadline for admissions, helps filter them through, and then first time applicant. So we can see every good interaction. And as soon as we see something that goes wrong or is incorrect, or maybe was like just quite there at answering the question, but needs a little bit of refinement, we're already going to be working towards a fix for that question. So if someone in the future asks the same thing, they'll get the proper interaction. Did you have, yeah.
I see you've been tagging conversations. You tagged it with good.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then what other things are you looking for? What are some other tags that you might put on a conversation if not good?
So for instance, we have a mismatch here where the bot gives just a completely different response. So someone here asked for, I want to accept the remaining of my loans. And then the bot gave information about enrollment verifications. But then this is something that could be as easy as, oh, let's add this statement that they said as a training phrase for a specific response. So when they ask again, accept the remaining of my loans, then the bot will be able to go, all right, cool. So you can accept your loans by going to My Coyote, going through your student center, and then we mark it as a fixed, where this was a problem, we made a change, and now it's fixed. And we have a few different ways to mark how a conversation goes wrong, I guess. Mismatch, we see an example here, or we'll have a determine best answer where the user asks something like, my ID doesn't work. Well, to us, do you have an ID card? Is your ID card not working? Is your student ID not working, trying to log in? So then we can take some time to think about how do we best direct this sort of question to a proper answer. Let's see, I see we just got a question here. What proportion of good conversations do you receive classified in relation to problem conversations? So definitely recently, we have seen a good amount of good conversations. We've seen an increasing number of good conversations coming into the bot. I mean, just yesterday we were seeing 13 to 15 good conversations in a row before an error comes up. And that's really cool for us to see, since recently we've made a lot of big changes to the entire structure of the bot. And since making those changes, some things like will break here or there, or I mean, that certainly happens all the time, since, you know, because everything is so packed and complicated in terms of understanding what a person is saying. You know, we could tell the bot, all right, take this phrase, put it into this response. But if we add a training phrase in one response, or maybe even remove a training phrase from a response, that might affect other conversations or other topics or responses that have similar words. So we're always watching out for that. But since making these structural changes, we have seen a very big increase of quality of conversations and a very big increase of good interactions, correct database responses, etc. So we definitely have a whole lot more good than we see problems. But again, as soon as we see a problem, we're already going to be on our way to fixing that problem so it doesn't happen again in the future.
Yeah, I think just like everything related to the chatbot, every question, the answer is very complex. So everything, Sam, everything you've said here is good, and accurate. The application of these tags, good or mismatch or fixed or whatever. Remember, a conversation can be encapsulated into every exchange with the bot. So someone asks a question, they get an answer. We want to look at that. Well, some of these exchanges might be on multiple topics. And so some parts of that conversation are good and others may be mismatches. So it is complex that way. And that's, you know, it's very subjective. The human is saying, well, I think this is bad. I think this is good. I think this needs a fix, and that's on us. But Samuel, can you talk about programmatically what is also happening in the background, where there's a confidence level applied with each
Yes.
interaction with the bot, and how we look at confidence level, and how is that derived, and what do we do with it?
Right. So let me move back over to, let me just pull up Dialogflow again real fast. So every time the bot takes in a question and every time the bot processes it and comes back with an answer, it'll always pair it with some numerical value we call confidence, which basically is the bot's way of saying, this is how sure I am correct. I gave you a correct answer. So here, this is a test panel that we can use, but I can ask the bot, you know, how to apply to CSUSB. And so we have some very complicated information back here, but this number right here represents how confident the bot was in answering this question. And so we have another analytics tool we have on the back end. Yes. So David, who is sitting in the audience, is referring to our Splunk dashboard, which I will log into right now and just show a little bit of. But so Splunk.
Can you tell us whether that confidence level was good or bad, or
So that something to clear up is because of the massive amount of responses that we have built into the bot, and because of words being similar between a very different amount of responses. So for instance, someone could ask for requirements like, am I required to fill out this form? Am I required to attend orientation? Because that word is so spread between different responses, whenever there's a query, including that word, that confidence is always going to be less than, I guess, like what we would consider for an assignment, for example, you know, 90% is an A, 80 is B, C, D. We can't really have that same judgment here. This is only 64% confident that it got the response correct, but it did actually give the correct response. And a lot of responses that are somewhere around the 60 to 70, 80% range are usually correct, but sometimes the bot can still think it's confident, still giving a confidence level in that same area, but it still gave an incorrect answer, which is why we're always checking every conversation to make sure, all right, you might think you're confident in this situation, but you still gave the wrong answer. Let's retrain you so that way you can send them to the right place. So usually the best confidences are in that range. Anything lower will usually kind of be incorrect or need a little bit of tweaking to make sure that it stays correct with that high confidence. Let me pull up Splunk right now.
And you have a dashboard in Splunk that where you display low confidence interactions. Okay, is that what you're going to show us? I know it
Yes.
can show a lot more than that. I'm just picking that up.
But yeah, so I'm pulling up that dashboard right now. We call it for ourselves the all boss dashboard. But so this is the analytics that we can pull up on our back end. This dashboard not only low confidence levels, but it also kind of shows us fallbacks. And I haven't addressed fallbacks yet. That was a great time to. So fallbacks is pretty much when the bot immediately is like, I'm sorry, I can't make sense of what you're saying, or I don't know what you're talking about. And we have it set to where anything less than 30% confidence will always refer to a fallback, because by that point, anything less than 30%, it's just going to be wrong no matter what. Or maybe even we don't have a response built into the bot to cover what they asked yet. So the bot's just, I don't know what you're talking about. And so here in this section below, this is where we can see everything above 30%, but still pretty low. And we should be able to sort by confidence here. So we can see like the highest confidence that we have in this section, at least visibly right now, is like up to 70% confidence. And like I just talked about a little bit ago, even though Dialogflow here in this case gave a 60% confidence with its answer, and it was correct, there are some interactions in here where it'll give as high as 70% confidence, but still maybe is wrong sometimes or needs to be looked at. But we can look at this to see all of the major low confidence responses, which some of these may be correct, and they probably are going to be correct, but they're still subject to review to make sure that it still gave the correct response. If it didn't, then we'll work on a fix for that. But so this is just even one example of the kinds of dashboards that we can make using Splunk. Like here, this is a percentage pie chart of different kinds of requests or all the different interactions within the last week. Of course, the welcome message being one of the biggest ones, because everybody gets the welcome message when they start a new conversation. But always, the next biggest one based on our analytics is calendar information. Recently, though, we can see that there's been a lot of responses regarding admissions, probably because students are going through the admissions process recently right now. And as soon as final exams start rolling around in a few weeks, there'll probably be a lot of questions about final exams, and I need to access my exam, or I need help with Canvas. And those are questions that we can expect coming up soon.
Samuel, I wanted to bring something up as an example that I think everybody can wrap their heads around that, that we're working on, and that the bot will eventually help out with.
Yes.
And that has to do with appointments, right? Appointments, I will begin with saying that if someone types in, I need to make an appointment, you can imagine how the bot is going to struggle with, any human would struggle with, you need an appointment with who? With whom do you need an appointment? Because there are so many places on campus, that's what we think of to make an appointment. one of the things we're working on is to implement a campus-wide appointment solution that is a single solution for every office department on campus that makes appointments, including individuals. So let's say that this is in place. You have basically a database now of calendars, and whether those calendars belong to an individual or an office, if we can get a list of those names and department names and keywords involved in it and match that up for the chatbot to make a connection when someone says, I need to make an appointment. If they say the name of the person or if they say the name of the department, we'll be one step closer to be able to say, to check a database and say, aha, I have a match for this department, say the writing center. There are several writing centers on campus, so they better specify which writing center they need an appointment with. But it could eventually deliver back to them a link to where they can make an appointment. Now, sure, we can imagine a day where they might actually handle making the appointment within the bot, but for now, I think end users will take the ability to be sent to the exact right place, wherever that is, to actually schedule an appointment with the group that they want, and they should be satisfied that the bot led them there.
And that's
the conclusion. Yeah.
And then that's only one of the things that we want this bot to eventually be able to know. Like eventually we would like the bot to answer questions about classes. For example, if we had a database of courses in the bot, then the bot could answer questions such as, how long is the wait list for this particular class? Or what days is this specific course available? Or other questions to search by the subject of the course. Class information is something we'd like the bot to know. Maybe eventually tutoring sessions by course, perhaps fee information, which I mentioned before, but these are all things that we would like the bot to know, and we like to work on getting the bot to know because availability of that data is so important for the chatbot. I see we had another question in here. Could the bot look at from which page the bot was launched to possibly come up with the best guess of where the request needs to be directed? That would be great if we could. We would need to, the bot currently can't do that, but certainly that's something that we look at right there and communicate. We can see the page that the person is coming from, which perhaps could help us on the back end figure out where, maybe how to interpret a query. But in terms of the page URL, it is currently not available to us. We would need to make a request or figure out some way to get that page available to the bot, because if the bot could have that page URL available, it could add some bias towards specific responses. So if the bot sees that a user is coming in from
Sammy, you just cut out. I don't know if everyone can hear me.
I think I pressed the mute button. Whoops.
Oh, okay. Okay.
What was the last thing that I was saying?
Talking about what we could do if we could know where they're at. So, I mean, just to be clear, I know that we're all looking at the URL where this conversation was initiated, and we're saying that we don't know it. We do know it through this interface. We know it. What we're saying is we don't have a means to bring that into the bot for it to use in its knowledge base to then insert that into its ability to find an answer and make a judgment on what the context of the conversation is. It would be very useful. So you're spot on with the idea, Felix. Yeah.
Context is one of the things that is very important to the bot, especially since the bot is one bot that kind of encompasses a whole range of different topics. Historically, the bot actually used to be structured as 8 separate and different bot projects. And that's why the bot is available on the main department websites. Admissions, there is an admissions bot. Financial aid, there is a financial aid bot. Parking bot, etc. Relatively recently, we made a structural change to put all of these different bots under this single bot of Ask Cody. Now that introduced with it a few interesting challenges, some of which we're still working on, which is largely vagueness. When there were specific bots on specific websites, it was very safe to assume that, okay, this person is talking about parking, they're talking to the parking bot, they're most likely going to have a parking related question. We can't make that assumption anymore. And we still get a lot of questions or queries that come off as vague when dealing with all of these different topics. I think this is a great point to move to back to the topic of, what we do to try and help the bot grow and become better, is making conversations, and especially conversations that can help filter where these vague or unclear interactions can help be redirected to where they need to go. And one of the biggest tools we've been using recently to help make these conversations is a diagramming software or platform called Lucidchart. And what we can do on Lucidchart is design conversations. We can design the flow of conversation as a user is using the bot. So for example here, this is a conversation about appointments.
Will not print posters anymore,
Mhm,
like your poster. They
mhm.
won't do it anymore.
This is a conversation about
Oh,
making appointments.
Well, when you go outside, have it printed.
Oh, James, we can hear you through a microphone at Yutong's desk. Yay.
Cool. All right. So, so for example, this is a flowchart we made about appointments, where if a user just goes to the bot, I want to make an appointment, the bot will take the time to go through, all right, what kind of appointment do you want to make? And so we can see we use, so a little bit of backtracking here. So as you may have noticed in the widget here, we have the response, but then underneath the response, we have what looks like these buttons. These are what we call suggestion chips. And so users can click on these suggestion chips to kind of help guide the flow of conversation. So on our flowcharts here, we use suggestion chips to our advantage, where they come into a response. And if it's part of a larger conversation, we can use these chips to help direct to different parts of this much broader or larger topic. So in the example of appointments here, going from vague, I want to make an appointment, or I want to speak to someone, they can go, all right, do you want to talk to financial aid? Do you want to make an appointment with career? Do you want to make an appointment with admissions? Post-admissions advising for prospective students, or are you already a student and do you want to have academic advising appointments? And so we have responses that can answer in the current state how to make an appointment with each department. But that ties back to what we were earlier talking about, a single appointment solution. This conversation could be changed and updated to work with that integration for a much more direct sort of, you can make an appointment on this calendar with this department. And another great example we have of a conversation is back to technology support about email. If a user just goes email or email help to the bot can direct them to all sorts of different responses regarding email. What to do if your email's disabled? Are you an alumni and you want to get an alumni email? Do you need to reset your password recovery? How do you log on? And we have all sorts of different conversation flows to go from topic to topic. We have a conversation about Duo. We have a conversation about registration. We have a conversation about parking permits. And we have a document listing out all of the different conversations actually. And last I looked, it was like at least definitely 10 larger conversations, but we're always working on flows, and we're always working on making new conversations, new flows to help us be able to direct students to where they need to go properly. And another layer on top of these conversations, for example, I'll pull up the Duo as an example. So I think everything I'm pulling up, I also just want to briefly mention that even though this is a chatbot, it uses AI to process what the user is saying and send them to a response. Every single response and every single conversation on this bot is hand built. We're taking a lot of time to build out these conversations manually to make sure that we can get like the best quality sort of interactions and conversations that we can. And so, for example, under this conversation flow for Duo, let me go ahead and get rid of these. You know, they say something like, you know, we need help with Duo. What can you do for us? And so it gives them basic information, but then the sub chips are like, this is how you can add a device. Are you setting up Duo for the first time? And so we've already talked about flows and sub chips, but another layer to this is adding context, tying back to us briefly mentioning context before, where the bot can give a response saying, all right, I can help you add a device to your Duo, and then ask the question, you know, can you still access Duo on your old device? And this results in a yes or a no question. Now, if we were to just build this directly into the bot where the training phrases were variations of yes or no, that would be a problem because there's more than one conversation where you might ask the user or ask a person a yes or a no question. And so if they just type in yes or no to the bot, very plainly, the bot's not going to know what conversation are you a part of because there are multiple yes or no training phrases. So this is where we would add a context. We would tell the bot, you are under this specific context. Think of it like a ticket of admissions. If you're going to a park, you have this ticket and you're not going to be let through unless you have it. And so some of these responses make the difference between where they get sent. So when they ask this question, I want to add a device, they're given a ticket. You're talking about adding a device to a Duo. Can you access your old device? Yes, they have the ticket. They can access this response about you can access Duo on your old phone. Here's the procedure to adding Duo. But if they say no, then they're sent to, all right, well, you'll have to figure it out in these sort of ways, depending on your situation. But that ticket allows the bot to understand the yes or the no under this certain context. So there are plenty of examples where we would use context. So it's that next layer behind, you know, if we knew what the URL was when the user speaks to the bot, we can already apply context to have this set of responses with a bias towards what the user asks. But this is the next best thing that we can do is under larger conversations, we can manually add a context to a conversation to keep them in this flow that is relevant to what they're talking about.
So as you can all see, it's not complex at all. Right. I mean, this is great insight because, and I love the contrast in the screens here. Well, not the contrast so much, but right, you see the chatbot on the left-hand side, and you do see suggestion chips and all of that. So that is a reflection of what you see on the right-hand side, which is the conversation flow, and what you get. But there's so much going on behind the scenes. There's so much preparation, anticipation, and you know, one thing that's worth mentioning is the chatbot to us, and as well as the people who use it, is kind of seen as this being that knows some things and doesn't know other things, and therefore it has a reputation because people will ask it and be dissatisfied with an answer, and then say, well, that thing, that being doesn't know very much and is not helpful, but there's more people paying attention and watching this to what it knows and what answers it gives than any other staff member who works on campus, right? A staff member could be giving poor information out, but who catches that? Who knows that is going on? And speaking of which, this chatbot has the potential of being the most excellent employee on campus, because once it does know and have a lot of very excellent answers, it can always be polite about it, can always give the same exact answer, no variation on it once it's you guaranteed. And it can honestly know more than any human being who works on campus, no matter how long they've worked there, potentially, because there's just so much that it can tap into. Again, if we have a database, it never sleeps, it never gets sick, it works all weekend, it never asks for a raise, it never files a grievance, it never does any of that. I want to read this chat question here, but as I do, I want to invite everyone in the last few minutes we have here to tell us what you would like the chatbot to know, and if we know that it knows it, we'll let you know. But we want to hear from you. Type into the chat what you would like the chatbot to know, or what, if you want to speak on behalf of students and you're not one, put what you think it should know for their benefit, right? So from someone here, how do you want to see the bot evolve in the future? We want to see the bot and have the bot be perceived as a quality personal assistant to everyone. So what should a personal assistant do? Personal assistant should remind you of things that you have to do, and it should be able to answer any question that you have within the context of, you being a student, you interacting with CSUSB, right? Beyond that, there's plenty of other tools that can tell you what the weather is, right? We don't need the bot to tell you what the weather is. Sure, maybe it would be cool if it could tell you the temperature on campus. I believe we still do have a weather station, so that's not a far-fetched thing to be able to do. But we wanted to be perceived as a high-quality personal assistant, not only to students, but potentially to faculty and staff as well, being able to answer questions about the campus. So there's just a long way to go, because we can think of all the data sources that that need to be in place and need to be improved upon. So I mean, there's a lot of good stories. There are also data sources that just they need help. So earlier you heard someone talk about data fabric. The data fabric idea is to ensure that data sources exist in authoritative source, ideally in one spot and only once, and that we can draw from it, and that information is accurate, whether that information is public knowledge or personal to an individual. That's the big nut to crack, is the personal answers. So the bot currently interacts with public data and information, but if you asked it about, a staff member can't ask how many vacation hours they have accrued, but potentially we would like it to be able to tap into PeopleSoft for students and answer questions for staff and faculty, and answer questions on a personal level to be able to do that. So, oh, David thinks it does have an answer. Did you try it?
Yeah, I did try it right here. The bot's still training. The bot's so large, it takes like several minutes for it to train even just a new training phrase.
Yeah, like I think the weather station has the temperature, the last highest wind gust, the sustained wind, and these would be the little things that maybe we could put into it. So yeah, it hasn't changed. The humidity, it doesn't do a very good job of precipitation. I think it tries to determine whether it's raining or not, and it's not even sure. It might be foggy and say it's raining.
As someone from the high desert, rain is a rarity for us up there, but
Yeah. So, anyone else with ideas of what you think the chatbot should be able to do or know for people?
we'd love to know what's on your minds.
Give other than winning a prize in the spinning the wheel.
You can't sign up on the raffle through the bot, unfortunately.
Yeah. Looks like we're coming to a close. Samuel, I want to give you the last word here.
I think I'll just throw in my 2 cents to the question of, how do we want to see the bot evolved into the future? There are, I mean, Michael certainly already said a lot about, what we want it to be, what we want it to know, its capabilities, but I see this bot as having so much potential, and this bot being such an important and valuable resource and tool to anybody on campus. Yeah, even though that implies that it's not already, it is already a very important and valuable tool, but we can always add more content, more information, make it more helpful to people, to students, staff, faculty, anybody who has a question. So far right now, the bot has its data set. It has all of its responses and conversation flows, but it's constantly evolving and it's constantly growing and it's constantly being worked on and it's constantly being made better. So the next time someone asks the bot, a question and the bot doesn't do too well and the person like swears at the bot or whatever, it happens. But as soon as that happens, a fix and an improvement is already being made. So the next time you come back and ask about the same question, it should be a lot better than it was before.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to understand. It, we would love for human beings to react the same way, but can you imagine someone standing over your shoulder, listening to the answers that you give and going, "No, that's wrong," or hitting you up at the end of the day, like you wake up in the morning and there's a list of all the incorrect things that you said the day before and what the correct answers are, and that you just have to download it into your brain and now you give better answers. That's why we don't feel that it's fair to judge the chatbot for any an interaction. It's in the same sense that if you go to a restaurant and you have a wait person who doesn't provide you with quality service, should that be a knock on the entire restaurant and should you never go again? Chances are you might get a different wait person or they might not work there anymore. But it's kind of, I'm drawing that analogy because things have an opportunity to improve, and hopefully we've conveyed today that Samuel and David and our student assistant Bruce are constantly looking at this and constantly trying to make it better and get it to know more things.
Thank you very much for having us.
When James shows up and turns on his camera, it's time to shut up.
Hey, this is fun. It's cool to see, like, look under the hood and see all the technical back end stuff that goes on this. I know there's a lot of work that goes in making the chatbot work, and I've heard from Dave and Michael and a few others. But to see all the stuff there and the layout, I mean, it makes it, one, it's a little more mind-boggling to me, but to see that, and very impressive to see what that is. Now I'm trying to figure it out, but it looks very cool. So I'm personally quite impressed with all that stuff too. So thank you very much. It was a great presentation.